Hey, how's it going? I'm MisterBo, and in today's video, I thought it'd be a fun idea to talk about that PvP Crash Bandicoot game that was rumored last week. Now, if you managed to miss that rumor, then I'll leave a link in the description below or in the top right hand corner now, in which I did a video talking about, yes, this PvP rumored Crash Bandicoot game, but also the remaster of Wrath of Cortex. Now, I will be doing a separate video later in the week talking about my ideas for what this Wrath of Cortex remake, reimagination, remaster could be, how they could work new ideas into the original game that everyone sort of knows and maybe loves, and maybe how they could implement some of these other leaks we've heard about, where we're going to be seeing more masks and maybe even playable Cortex levels. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Before we get into this video though, make sure you click the like button to show your support and help spread this video out to more people. If you aren't already, subscribe for more gaming videos, and also make sure you tap that bell icon so you know when my future videos get uploaded. So, a PvP Crash Bandicoot game is rumoured to launch in 2021. It could be pushed back further, or it may just never come out, but that is the rumour at the moment. Now, there are a lot of possibilities for what this new PvP Crash Bandicoot game could be, so let's run down the most obvious ones it could be. I'll give you my thoughts and opinions on what they could do with that type of game, and also be sure to let me know your ideas in the comments below as well. So, the first one is Nitro-Fueled 2. Now, I did a video about what a Nitro-Fueled sequel would look like a couple of weeks ago. If you want to check that out, there'll be a link in the description below. But Crash Team Racing Nitro-Fueled sold exceptionally well, and it would make sense for Activision to want to cash in on that again. With a sequel, there is definitely a lot they could do. They could introduce a brand new adventure mode with a brand new story. They could introduce characters that people wanted to see in Nitro-Fueled that just didn't get introduced. We could see brand new tracks based on themes we never got to see in Nitro-Fueled, for instance the Great Wall of China levels from Warped. And because this is a PvP multiplayer game, they could really nail the online experience. CTR Nitro-Fueled was lacking in quite a few different areas, mainly quality of life changes like dedicated servers, maybe some more balancing with the weapons, etc. And I think this would give them another shot to refine down that PvP multiplayer experience that a lot of people really liked, but also a lot of people were kind of turned off by. Now, my theory for what a Nitro-Fueled 2 would actually be is more a crossover with Spyro, introducing more of the Spyro characters and more of the Spyro worlds as themes in some of the tracks, and maybe even implementing that into the adventure mode where you have a Spyro villain and a Crash Bandicoot villain team up to try and take over the world, and everyone has to come together to race against them and hopefully beat them. Now, at the moment, I would say that is the most likely idea for what this PvP game is. However, I don't think a Nitro-Fueled 2 would come so quickly, only 2 years after the first one. I think we would see a bigger gap between Nitro-Fueled and Nitro-Fueled 2, in my personal opinion, though I wouldn't really mind it. The next idea for a PvP game, which I think is everyone's kind of assumption at the moment, is of course a Crash Bash Remake, Remaster, Reimagination, whatever you want to call it. Obviously, the original Crash Bash was available to play split screen with other people, and it just makes a ton of sense to add in a multiplayer feature into Crash Bash. You're able to play against other people online and all these weird and wacky mini games. Now, obviously, Crash Bash as it is probably wouldn't be that great of a game, though they could do what I like to call the Nitro-Fueled treatment to Crash Bash. Now, I've mentioned this in many videos in the past, where I think they could combine Crash Bash with Crash Boom Bang. Add in a ton more minigames into Crash Bash, make it more of a Mario Party style game where you're going around the board. You have a load of characters to pick from. They could use the models that we saw in Nitro-Fueled. Maybe they would just have to add some more animations and voice lines. Maybe you could increase the player count of how many people are actually in these minigames. Instead of maybe 4, you introduce it up to maybe 8. You include the adventure mode that we saw. Maybe you flesh that out a little bit more, give it some more warp rooms. Maybe you completely restructure the way that the adventure mode even takes place. Add in a load more cutscenes. I think it could be a really fun game, and it's something that Activision is just missing in their portfolio. Mario parties, I believe, do pretty well for Nintendo, and it might be something that Activision is looking at and thinking, yeah, we could capitalize on this. We don't have that sort of fun party game for maybe the younger audience to play with. Maybe this could be our chance to do it. Now, from what I've seen in the comments, there are a lot of people sort of for a Crash Bash remaster in the way that I'm saying, where they do a Nitro-Fueled treatment to that, but there are also a lot of people who just don't want to see a Crash Bash remake. So it'd be interesting to see if something like this got announced, what the reception would be like. Personally though, I would love to see Crash Bash. It was the second Crash game I ever played, so I really love it, and that's probably why I like Rillaroo so much. Now we get to that point where it's a little bit trickier to determine what PvP game this could be. There are still plenty of ideas that could work in the Crash Bandicoot franchise for a multiplayer game. Then the next idea I had, which I briefly mentioned in my previous video, is a Crash fighting game. Now I know everybody wants Crash Bandicoot in Smash Bros. Ultimate, but what if instead of getting Crash in Smash Bros. Ultimate, we got a Crash fighting game where everyone from Nitro-Fueled was fighting against each other? Again, it's something that Activision doesn't really have in their portfolio of games yet, and I think it would work really well in the Crash Bandicoot franchise. Now, I don't know if you would see 50 plus characters like we see in Nitro-Fueled, because I'm sure it's a little bit harder to balance a fighting game than a racing game, because everyone's exactly the same in a racing game. In a fighting game, everyone's going to have different abilities, different movesets, animations, voice lines, so you might see a roster cut down slightly, maybe to only 20 or so different characters, but they could introduce more as the game progresses, and you could have really cool stadiums and fighting arenas, again based on the different locations from the Crash franchise. I think a lot of people would be probably pretty happy to see this, and I think it would work well in the sort of Crash franchise as a whole. Obviously, kart racing games fit perfectly into Crash, party games fit really well into Crash as well. I think a fighting game would also just slot in there as a sort of nice Crash Bandicoot spin-off. But where do we go from there? What other PvP games could we see? Well, this is where we can then take a look at another franchise character that is doing similar things, where you have the mainline games and then you have spin-offs. Of course, I'm talking about Mario. Now, Mario has had tons of spin-off games over the years, including Mario Tennis, Mario Golf, Mario and Sonic at the Olympics, Mario Super Strikers Football. Could we see something similar with Crash? Crash Tennis, Crash Golf? I personally don't think so. Obviously, it's still a possibility. I feel like if Activision was to announce something like that, the Crash community would kind of feel like it was a bit of a shoo-in. Now, they could do something like a Crash at the Olympics or a Crash sort of sports game maybe, where you see lots of different sports all put together in one game. But at that point, I think it would be better just to give us a party game rather than a sports game. Of course, there are a ton of other sort of PvP styled games out there that are super popular. Maybe some of them don't really fit the Crash franchise as well. Another idea that I had is a class-based hero shooter game in maybe a similar vein to that of Plants vs Zombies Garden Warfare or Battle for Neighborville. That kind of hero shooter genre has been taking off recently again. We've got Bleeding Edge coming out this week, which is a melee focused game, and I feel like there is a lot you could do in the Crash universe. You could have Embryo and Cortex have their laser guns like they did in Crash Bash. You could have Dingodile and Crash have their spin attacks. A load of characters could have unique abilities, and you could have objectives in the maps that you need to progress through and complete. I think that could be an awesome idea as well. However, they could condense that down into a smaller version and put that into something like a remake of Crash Bash. Of course, there's probably plenty of other ideas that I'm just completely blanking on for what they could do with the Crash Bandicoot franchise in terms of making it a PvP multiplayer game. The only other idea that I've really kind of had is maybe it is more of a traditional Crash Bandicoot game, taking inspiration from something like Mario Maker, where you kind of build your own Crash levels out and then you can sort of speed run and race against other people on your level. However, if this is a PvP focused game, I feel like that kind of goes away from it. So I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think this new PvP Crash Bandicoot game is gonna be? Again, out of all the ideas I've suggested here, I'm kind of leaning towards a Crash Bash Remaster. Take a look at some of the games that have been really popular over the last couple of years, like Gang Beasts and those sort of smaller indie brawler games that are just sort of fun to play with other people. Taking those elements and those ideas and introducing them into Crash Bash, reimagining some of the mini games we saw in the original, maybe branching them out into bigger and better games. I think it could be a really fun game, and I think a lot of people would maybe be surprised by what they could do with a modern day Crash Bash. Whether it would be called Crash Bash, I've had the idea of calling it Crash Bash Boom Bang, but there's certainly other names they could call it. So again, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What would you like to see this PvP Crash game be, and what do you actually think it is going to be? If there were enough cool suggestions and ideas of things that maybe I didn't mention in this video, then I might take some of your ideas and put them into a separate video. Again, if you did enjoy this video, then be sure to click the like button to show your support and help spread this video around to more people. If you aren't already, make sure you subscribe for more gaming content and coverage, and also tap that bell icon so you never miss a video. But thank you very much for watching and for hanging out, and hopefully I'll catch you in the next one. Bye bye.